Hello everybody, it's GirlGotGame and welcome back to Gilded Shadows. Today we are starting YUU's sweet ending. So, we're in chapter 1. There's apparently 2 different walkthroughs for the sweet ending. So I've chosen the first walkthrough, which has Morgan's personality as still cautious, but she's flexible and emotional now. So, that's what we're gonna do. And with her being emotional, she's going to have some different thoughts and things. But I think there's going to be quite a few, just from the quick glance I took, it looks like there's going to be quite a few options that we've taken before. So I don't know how long this will take, but we will see. I'll edit out any long periods of just blah, 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 blah. But here we go. So, chapter 1, she's emotional. No denying it had been a rough first week. Even before I woke up, apparently. I was somewhat satisfied to learn that, while a bit out of it still, I had acted out at least part of the desire to scream into the void and throw things. So emotional. My only regret was not remembering most of it. I recalled throwing a hospital pillow at Caleb when he was being cranky at me after I woke up, deserved. And I recalled him getting scolded by the chief medical officer of Endgame, who was also the doctor originally in charge of me before my care had been turned over to someone else. Watching Caleb retreat in frustrated defeat sustained me for days after during my darker moments. Damn! Even if I got scolded moments later. But I was a patient, so that worked in my favor. Dr. Sosky was much more gentle with his patients than he was with others. As long as you listened to the important things, you could throw pillows at grumpy people without him threatening to personally escort you from the hospital wing. Or sedate you. Not that I tested the limits to his patience. Much. Okay, I'd been threatened with sedation once, but only once, because as satisfying as tantrums were, they changed nothing. And all that was left when they passed was the sense of loss and futility. Oh, that was already worth it. Already so worth it. Okay, so we're talking to Mum now. Not exactly those options, no. But if I let myself get hung up on that, I can never move forward, Mum. The situation has changed, and I have to change with it.
You've always been like this, Morgan. It's a fantastic ability to be able to adapt, but don't let go of your dreams so easily. I don't want you out there doing dangerous things.
Digging in ruins on Dione isn't the safest career path either.
The ruins on Dione aren't actively out to get you.
Some people might disagree with you.
It's not the same, and you know it.
I know, Mum. But you shouldn't worry about me. Once I get assigned to the research division here, I can try to find a project that interests me. And I'd hope none of the research here is actively out to get me either. Are we back? Not yet.
I suppose that's better than nothing. Would be better if they'd at least give you an honorary degree or something. You worked so hard.
I'll see what I can do about that, but no promises, unfortunately.
I just wish we were there so I could help more. Getting into Brazil is so difficult, though.
Yes, your daughter is the queen, and Mum is also a queen, of a different sort. What makes one of us? That she is excelling. That makes one of us.
Oh, you didn't expect to do so?
I think it's more accurate to say I had no desire to do so. But old habits die hard and all that. I'm pretty well conditioned by the new Albion system to excel whether I want to or not. Still, excelling at writing reports or doing research is different from excelling at teleportation and punching things. Everyone kept talking about potential, but I wasn't certain I could do it, no.
How surprising.
The council is pleased about my progress either way. They're contemplating when to send me out for field duty at this point. Eagerly awaiting reports of how efficiently I can beat up the bad guys.
Already?
It's come up, yes. I'm pushing back, of course, but I'm sure you know how they are.
Yes, I am very well acquainted with their insistence on making absurd decisions, lest we all forget how stupid they are.
Indeed. Say less. What are we doing here? Okay, I think we've done this before, so this should just be a skip.
Skip?
Okay, I confess I may have shouted a little. Then Caleb joined in. After that, it was mostly him. And in our defense, one council member was being particularly combative. I can only take so much being spoken down to before I lose my temper. And I'm nowhere near as hot-tempered as Caleb. Ari had to drag him out. So I admit that it did get loud.
I hope you don't think I'm judging. It does them good to occasionally be shouted at. Though some are more reasonable than others, they go unchallenged far too often. And it's too easy for them to hide from the fallout of their decisions. Seeing agents angry enough to shout may help wake some of them up. One hopes.
It does them good to be shouted at, huh? Have you ever shouted at them before, then? He gave me a slightly amused little grin, but didn't answer. Just gonna let me smoke that for a bit.
I'm not sure I agree with your assessment that you are not suited to field work. Or rather, I should say that even in the short time I worked with you, I observed you have a high degree of adaptability that would serve you well there. But there is a certain level of detachment that's also required, and you know best whether you possess it.
Is that... Okay, now we're back around again. Just little tidbits here and there. That's easier said than done, isn't it? Even without the council trying to guilt-trip me, it's hard to not see myself as responsible.
Perhaps, but it's my observation that regret and guilt can become shame, and shame is not a productive emotion. It's good to consider ways to avoid repeating mistakes. It is not good to blame yourself for things outside your control.
I know. I just have a lot of time to ruminate on these things lately. Despite all the training, I still have more free time than I'm used to.
I see. Are you by any chance the sort who buries yourself in work to avoid thinking of difficult things?
Sometimes, I guess. My mind wanders when it's not busy, and that can lead to a spiral.
A common affliction here, unfortunately. It is part of why there are those among us who are notorious workaholics.
In any case, thank you for not branding me a criminal. I forgot about the super loud. Thank you, YUU. So what's going on with the council? Yeah. Or at the very least, they were a lot more manipulative than I'd realized until now. Half my anger was at myself for not realizing it. I had yet to decide if I should be angry at everyone else because I wasn't sure whether they were hiding it or if they were as ignorant as I'd been. How could I have just trusted them? How could I so easily turn myself over to them without ever questioning it? If not for you, I never would have either. He, at least, was someone I couldn't be angry at. Okay, this is good. More than anything, I was afraid that now it was too late to do anything about it. Okay, so... No, not yet. A small group of junior agents scurried out of my way as I passed them. I saw one familiar face giving me a concerned look as she tried to call my name. I was past them before she got the word out, and only then did I realize the air was crackling with Psy. Oh, this is why it's different. She's boiling. They must have felt it collide against their spheres, and I did my best to get that under control, knowing an F-class like me struggled with that sort of thing. I didn't want to make a scene, or at the very least I didn't want more rumors to start up. Though if they did, I suppose I'd know where they'd started. In any case, it was good to get a handle on that. I already expected Magnus to weasel out of talking to me. It would be worse if he knew I was angry because my Psy was trying to explode everything around me. Even with the mental warning to calm down, I couldn't quite stop myself from bursting into Magnus's office without warning. Oh, hello, Caleb. When did you get here? He was leaning against his desk, staring outside, and gave me a startled look as I stood there glaring at him. For just a split second, I saw a genuine reaction before that serene mask slipped over his features and he smiled at me.
Oh my! Is everything alright?
No, it's not. And we need to talk. Now. So much for not letting him know I'm angry.
Of course.
He waved me to one of the chairs in front of his desk.
Whatever's bothering you, I do hope we can avoid another shouting match since it's just the two of us.
I clenched my jaw and moved towards him. I also wanted to avoid that. It was part of why I'd wanted to see him alone, though I wasn't going to shout at anyone if they weren't intentionally provoking me. Of course, he had a bad habit of doing just that. He spoke in half-truths and puzzles, flippant humor, and made obvious attempts to upset and annoy people. If you listened, you could catch glimpses of a very bitter man beneath some of those snide smiles. Bitter enough to warrant questioning why. If you weren't paying attention, though, he'd just make you angry. He was exhausting, but also weirdly sympathetic at times. But when we were alone, all of that sometimes faded, and those hints of whoever he was beneath the pretense would surface. I was hoping for some level of sincerity today, but I didn't know if I'd get it. He did end up getting quite a bit. I took a seat and waited for him to do the same. As he did so, the smile faded. This was a good sign, because that damn smile of his usually meant he was trying to pick a fight. I took a deep breath and tried to steady my voice. My hands were clenched tight in my lap as I spoke. I think this is all new still, right? Yeah, okay. Man, this has really changed this meeting with Magnus. Magnus, I've been doing some research. About my status here. Specifically, I've been looking into Endgame's regulations. Given the Council's reluctance to listen to my wishes, I thought knowing the policies here might help me find a way to convince them. Or find something that might support my position.
And did you have any luck with this research?
Maybe. But that isn't what I want to discuss with you.
Then why are you here, Morgan?
I know we talked about my collection off the street.
Ah yes, the kidnapping, as you call it.
I don't care what you call it, Magnus. Abduction, arrest, collection. At that time, you told me that Endgame was legally allowed to apprehend dangerous Espers, which I didn't question. I was overwhelmed and still recovering. But now I have to know. On what grounds, what legal grounds did Endgame determine that I was dangerous? Because there's nothing in settled law that allows you to arrest me and force me into your organization because I was in danger. In fact, I couldn't find anything that would compel me as an adult to stay here at all. I always thought it was a matter of course that Espers go to Endgame. I knew that some Espers were allowed to not join, but I thought they were exceptions due to their rank. There's nothing about rank in the legislation at all, and most laws are specifically about registration and children. The only thing I'm legally required to do is register and train, not be apprehended or join.
And where do you believe you would train if not here?
You have a long-distance training program.
Not for someone of your rank.
That's not my problem, is it?
Not knowing how to control your abilities makes you dangerous.
Says you, not the law.
As you may have noticed, the definition of danger in legal terms is quite broad, which gives us a great deal of leeway in interpreting it. And the Triad rarely questions our determination of that.
Magnus, failure to register results in a fine, not being press-ganged into this organization.
Failure to register legally comes with the consequence of a fine. Endgame wields the law like a weapon when it wishes to, and ignores it the rest of the time. Generally, what happens when we discover an unregistered Esper of consequence is that they come here, and no one questions it.
Do they just count on no one ever looking deeper and questioning the validity of this policy?
I imagine so, yes.
This is a complete manipulation of legal policy, of people.
It is. And it dates all the way back to the establishment of those laws, Morgan.
You're saying it was intentional? I'm saying this might be a time to skip?
Skip?
What's going on? Oh, nice.
Morgan, I wish to be frank with you.
Oh, how rare.
That's so mean. But I'll accept that it's true. I find it does not benefit me to show my cards often.
I gave him an expectant look and motioned for him to continue. Okay, this is all different. Interesting.
When I first learned about you, I thought it would be better to ignore the situation, to ignore your existence. Why would I drag you into this cesspool after all? No one deserves that, really.
Cesspool? I had sometimes had the feeling Magnus wasn't fond of Endgame, but it was odd to hear him refer to it that way given his position.
Unfortunately, ignoring you was not an option. Crimson had already taken note, something I've told you before. We couldn't leave you be with dangerous factions wishing to do far worse by you than bring you to Cor Solaris.
I'd heard this part before. Is this still different? No, okay, now we're back. Just the cesspool comment. Alright. Well, that was enlightening, I guess, in some ways. It's always interesting. The different sides of Magnus you can get depending on your personality. How could they do that? Treat most of the population like test subjects?
Same way anyone walks on someone else. Convince yourself they aren't worth as much as you and just avoid thinking about it otherwise.
That's horrible.
Happens all the time, unfortunately. Up there, down here, doesn't matter.
I hated believing that was true. What did that mean for humanity if we still hadn't learned that lesson? Okay.
New Terrans must relocate to places with a nanite saturation below a certain threshold. Those who have this autoimmune disorder anyway, which is currently about half the population. We can deactivate nanites in some situations, but we can't remove them. Even deactivation is only somewhat successful. We can never deactivate the trillions of nanites in the air. We can deactivate enough of them they no longer act as a functional collective. But decreasing the efficiency of their interlinking abilities isn't enough to stop people from being infected by them. And we can't shut down every single nanite. In high-saturation domes, we can't deactivate enough to prevent them from re-establishing connections anyway. That's why it's best to look at places that have a naturally lower nanite saturation. Unfortunately, all those places are on the day side of the planet and in the Triad's control. The Triad is not keen to hand any territory over.
Are we... Okay, we're back. Just a slight little difference there. Interesting. Are we doing any affection here? No. This time, we're gonna watch the teasing with amusement. I found myself laughing at their teasing again as I watched them with great amusement. There were moments you really did come across like an older brother teasing his younger brother when he was interacting with Caleb. He didn't have quite the same energy with anyone else, and it made me wonder a little about their relationship. Or maybe it was just a sign of how long they'd known each other. In spite of the frustrations of being here, it wasn't bad to be drawn into this kind of camaraderie. At the very least, they were an amusing distraction. I also like that they have, like, mirror images of each other right now. So cute. Even Ari seemed amused by it. Though, when our eyes met, his faint smile faded, and he tipped his head to the side as he watched me. I didn't know him extremely well yet, but I was familiar with that expression. You look like you want to say something, Ari. Is it something about the assignment?
No, actually, I've been curious since the meeting earlier about why you missed your morning practice. Magnus indicated he called you in to talk, but it didn't seem like he was giving you a precursor to our later meeting. Based on your behavior, it doesn't appear to be anything negative, but I admit I have been unable to discern what he may have wished to speak with you alone about.
Ah, about that. Magnus didn't call me in. I skipped training myself and went to talk to him unannounced.
Ah. Now you're coming clean. Does this mean I get to give you extra laps in the morning for skipping out today?
Ugh, please don't. It was important.
Important enough for Magnus to attempt to cover up for you when he lied and said he was the one that called you. Unless that was just an act of pity. Though that seems unlikely with someone with as obvious a sadistic streak as Magnus Ulrich. Magnus gets a strange amount of pleasure from making things difficult for others. But he does have a habit of attempting to cover for people in the strangest of ways at times. I'm just curious what the hell you needed to talk to him about so badly that you not only skipped training, but went to his office in full uniform.
YUU, do you recall how you told me to look into Endgame's regulations about agent placement? So I would have ammunition when it came to convincing the council to not place me in a combat unit?
Of course.
Okay, now we're back. Interesting. Date or no date? Date? Okay. Girl's still on the date train. We love that for her. Okay, talking about Heidi. Maybe, but it's not an issue of helping her get over saltiness. For one thing, I get her frustration at having some newbie show up and, with no effort, take over a spot she wanted. I'd be upset about that too. I mean, I hit a wall when it came to my own goals, not in the form of another person, but still. I know what that feels like, so I can sympathize with the frustration.
Morgan.
Even though she was a little rude at first, I understand why, so I'm not going to hold it against her. She wants to push herself toward a promotion, and I'm willing to help with that if I can. I respect that drive to work hard. Heidi is not looking for shortcuts or anything. She has a goal she's working hard to achieve. And look, I don't agree with Ari's reasoning for not wanting to train her. I understand that it's his choice, but this is my choice.
I guess that's fair.
Besides, if she's able to achieve promotion, then Endgame will have 2 queen ranks. And I feel like that might benefit me too, so it's not totally altruistic.
Aha! The truth comes out.
That wasn't my initial reason for reaching out to her, but I realized along the way that maybe it would be good for me as well.
I mean, I hear you, but I do not want a kid like that on the first guard. But I guess if they're able to pull together a complete second guard, it wouldn't be too bad.
She's not that much younger than I am, I hope you realize.
She's young enough.
She won't be young forever, Vaughn. Vaughn's like, I just want you to be the queen, okay? I don't want anyone else. I'm sad we didn't get more of YUU's date look. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the date look. Anyway, what are we doing with you on this date? No affection. We're gonna say you're abnormal for a rook. I remember you said you're abnormal for a rook, though.
Yes, correct. Most physical enhancements are difficult for me to maintain for a sustained period. But my neural processing enhancements are maintained almost automatically. Eventually I was able to learn to extend my enhancement abilities somewhat, but during my time at the academy I stood out among the rooks. I was smaller, less physically adept, focused on academics, and timid by comparison to the others. Children always take out their insecurities on others as a defense mechanism to distract from their own flaws. And typically, it means identifying outliers and grouping up to target them instead.
So you were bullied for being smart?
Precisely.
And Caleb as well, then?
Not at all. Caleb has always excelled at physical enhancement. It was never wise to bully him. Rather, he was the one who defended people like me. Despite his personality flaws, he does have an acute sense of justice.
A gentle smile came to his face as he remembered.
I've always found it rather endearing, and I suppose I became attached to him that way.
So smart kids get bullied at the academy. Interesting. In Cisalis, it was the opposite.
It depends on the child, of course. No one in their right mind would have bullied Magnus at that time, though he was far more charismatic back then anyway. Not the caricature he is today. But that story is not a happy one. Perhaps it's for another time.
And another route. The academy sounds brutal.
Most schools have that capacity, though the ways in which it expresses may differ.
I suppose that's probably true. The thoughtless cruelty of kids can be quite shocking at times.
They are still learning about the world, themselves, and how to engage safely within interpersonal spaces, so it's not surprising. I imagine you encountered your fair share of the same in a more commonplace school environment.
I suppose so. With my siblings as well, honestly.
I'm still curious about your family, though we've discussed them before.
I think we're back now. Yeah, okay. So a little bit more school background there. That was sweet. He always had a way of making my face flush warm with embarrassment. He does have a knack for that. I was suddenly so very conscious of the heat of his palm covering my hand. I thought it was something like that. I think this was him like, did you understand this was a date, or... I had expected him to be upfront about it, but somehow was still unprepared for him to say it so plainly. Is this all different? Yeah, because she's emotional now. She's emotional.
And can I take your acceptance of my request as an indication you are open to my interest?
Why was it so difficult to form words suddenly? It wasn't that I was close to the idea, but I tried to organize my thoughts in a way that wouldn't make him regret having said that. He's looking at her with such, like, sweet amusement. I love it. To be honest, I'm a little surprised you're interested in me, so I'm not sure what to say. I had time to think about it, and I still just don't understand what has you captivated with my company.
I didn't take you as someone lacking in self-confidence.
It isn't that. I just didn't expect to capture your attention specifically is all. You seem so... I don't know. Sorry. I feel like I'm not making much sense.
I didn't mean to fluster you, though I can't help but find it charming that I've done so.
He stopped and turned towards me, one of his hands still holding mine.
Morgan, you have captured the attention of half the people at Endgame, so it shouldn't be surprising to you that I'm among them. I, however, happen to be one of the few fortunate to be able to do more than watch from afar. There's nothing particularly dramatic or complex about my being attracted to you. You are a beautiful woman, so that part is no mystery.
Ah, there goes my face. How was I supposed to look at him when he said something like that?
And afforded the chance to get to know you a little better, I couldn't help but feel our personalities go well together. However, more than that, I simply find it enjoyable to be around you and talk with you. You have experiences far removed from my own, and I admire your hopeful optimism. I wish to learn more about you. There's little more to it than that. I intended to tell you this before returning you to your flat, but I suppose since it's come up naturally on its own... I'm no stranger to the medical aspect of attraction and infatuation, but I am as much a captive to it as any other. There is not always a clear explanation for emotional connection. You are, from my view, a beautiful and fascinating individual, and I'm interested in pursuing something more romantic in nature with you. Though I have no intention of rushing anything, I find it more expedient to be upfront from the start. I enjoy your company, and intend to seek it out more often, but only if it's what you wish.
Oh, God, how did I even begin to respond to such a sweet and honest confession? That confession might even be better than the one I got the first time around. Good grief. This man. Especially when my heart wanted to escape my body, out my throat, my stomach was doing 50 somersaults an hour, and I couldn't even tell if anything was left of my face or if it had just escaped into the atmosphere as water vapor at this point. Man, do I feel that. I was barely even aware of what I was saying as I responded to him. I am not opposed to it. I mean, we can just see where it goes. Which made it sound as if I was nowhere near as interested in him as he was me. Good job, girl, good job. I covered my face with one hand, gripping his even tighter. At least he can, like, read your expressions and probably is like, I can see through what you said and be like, alright, I'm good with that. Sorry, that sounded so unenthusiastic. I'm just a little embarrassed, so it's a little hard to organize my thoughts. Yes. Yes. Yes? Stop! This is even cuter! I didn't think I could get cuter. What the heck, you guys? Aw, man. So cute. When I met his gaze again, his smile was so very gentle, eyes slightly closed, hair falling over his face, and my brain, which had nearly recovered, turned to mush again.
I will take that answer.
Thank God, because if he expected anything more eloquent, he was going to be disappointed. The air between us shifted as we continued walking. Yu's fingers twined with mine for a few moments before parting as if not wanting to push some boundary we hadn't crossed yet. That was wonderful. Everything about that was just great. Anyway, he motioned me closer and my nerves shot through the roof. We were doing this. We were really going to New Terra via teleportation. Okay. I tried to not let the absolute surreal nature of the situation get to me. Every day had been strange for a while now, but I couldn't help it as that sense of displacement and phoniness crept back in now that this was happening. I definitely did not belong in this group, but here I was. Trying my best to conceal my nerves, I stepped closer to Ari. It was YUU who caught my arm, holding a hand up to stop Ari before he said anything.
Morgan, do you need a moment to collect yourself or steady your nerves? You appear to be experiencing some amount of anxiety.
Aw, thank you. He stepped closer, scanning my face, and I knew a medical assessment of my pupils or something was coming next. It was my turn to fend him off. I'm fine, Dr. Sasaki. I promise. Yes, nervous. No, I don't need a minute. That mischievous smile of his widened when I called him Dr. Sasaki, and he stepped back with a slight chuckle.
I suppose I will not further overwhelm you by noting that you appear to be experiencing tachypnea and mild vasodilation of your facial tissues.
I hope I said that correctly. I was like, tachypnea? I and my vasodilation are fine. I promise. Though I'm grateful for your concern.
It is, of course, my job to be concerned about the medical well-being of the team. Morgan, if you please.
Ari's like, can you just stop flirting with medical terms over there? I want to leave. He sounded thoroughly exasperated. I let out a soft laugh, giving you a look that was half annoyed and half amused. Stepping closer to Ari, I caught his sleeve in my hand since I already knew it was easier for him to teleport others when he was touching them. And then he was unsatisfied, like, take my arm, girl. I was beyond the point where Ari's teleportation was disorienting, but a surprising wave of nausea hit me. Fortunately, it wasn't too bad, but I still wasn't expecting it. Right, because you did not give her a heads up this time. I had to admit I forgot it almost immediately when I saw the window with a backdrop of stars. I took a pause to just stare at it. Fortunately, there was no one else there yet because I probably looked like some wide-eyed junior agent. Probably. Ooh, are we gonna skip most of this chat? That's nice. Okay, so we are not stubborn enough to be like, it's President Lyra. So what are we doing this time? We're signaling to Ari. Okay. When she did that again, I caught Ari's eye and tilted my head towards her, trying to get him to say something. It might seem petty to nitpick over her use of titles, but she was doing it as a power play, a deliberate attempt to disrespect the people here. That was not going to lead to successful negotiations. Though confronting her might not either. But as mediators, I felt we should say something, especially because the new Terran representatives might not feel they could. Ari was silent a split second before he leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. Thank you, Ari. Man, he picked up on her cue quickly and was like, okay.
Senator Turner, I believe you mean to say President Lyra.
Her expression was so surprised that I felt she had probably gotten away with that at many other meetings until this point.
And, of course, this is Representative Evans, Murdoch, and Narang. In order to facilitate smooth negotiations in a stressful and frustrating situation, I believe it would be best to avoid misunderstandings. Though I'm certain you misspoke, it could be seen as an attempt to disrespect the new Terran government. It would be unfortunate if a miscommunication impacted the success of the meeting.
A very Ari-like lecture that was probably a little further than I'd have gone. That's because he's disappointed dad. But despite that she looked like she had just bit into a lemon, the senator pasted a smile on her face.
Of course. I apologize for misspeaking, President Lyra.
Are we... Okay, not yet.
Thank you for your consideration, Senator Turner. Anyway, as I was saying...
Interesting. With that, I believe I'll be going. Thank you all for being here, even if it did not go as we hoped. Right, so they don't thank Morgan this time because she didn't speak up. Makes sense. Okay, the T-cells. Yes. And what's the result of that?
The nanites swarm, mass editing cells to stave off the immune response. This generally makes the immune response more active. Once mass overgrowth occurs, we see serious mutations. Death. If the nanites identify a host as a serious threat, it's very difficult to treat before it becomes life-threatening. Right now, this problem exists in a very small group of patients, but I have yet to identify the triggers.
The virus-like nature is the concern. In higher saturations, it's possible the defensive protocols that lead to swarming could be communicated to other nanites outside the host body.
Correct. In those cases, it would behave very much like a communicable disease.
If the Triad was aware of this problem, it would shut down talks permanently. It's more than a mere special requirement. It's a threat.
We have not yet reached an infection level that requires informing the Triad.
Are we... Okay, now we're back. Are we doing analytical or flexible? We're doing flexible this time. Okay. On the Ari train, more so this route. That makes sense, I guess, to a certain degree. Though even if I said that, I didn't know if I was capable of having that level of detachment. Of course, I wasn't sure anyone was as capable of being as detached as Ari. I was well aware that was partially due to his upbringing and the fact his emotions had been suppressed as a child. But if everyone else tried to remain detached to that degree... It pisses me off. I was startled when she spoke. Her voice was soft and she was just staring down at the floor. This place. I always hate coming here because of the way things are run and the way people are treated. Like they only exist to benefit the government. The callous disregard for everyone's safety and well-being. I understand why the citizens of Solemn are furious. And frankly, it's astonishing the citizens of Antrim have learned to live with it. I guess that sometimes you learn to live with things when you don't have other options. It doesn't sound like they liked what was happening. No,
But it still happened for years. Decades. Even YUU was originally... I am not sure we should be discussing YUU's history while he's not present.
I did notice he and Roan seemed close. I presume he was previously from Antrim, or lived here anyway. And he seemed to have a strong dislike for the upper levels, and was an Esper. Was it possible he was also caught up in some of these experiments the others mentioned? She makes the jump a little bit quicker here than the first time around, which is interesting. He seemed close to Roan as well, and Roan mentioned being created in a lab. That was how they knew each other, wasn't it? The realization must have been all over my face because Ari sighed.
As I said, this is not something we should discuss amongst ourselves.
I'm right, aren't I? That was horrible. How did he end up in Endgame, then?
Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying. This situation has been a long time coming, and I don't sympathize with Ventus in the slightest. Solemn's in a terrible position, but Roan is right that they ignored what was going on in Antrim as well. Antrim just...
She clenched her jaw and looked away.
Antrim hits too close to home. In Delphine, it's the same as this place. You pretend you don't see it. You live your life in denial, or you align yourself to some stronger group for the sake of protecting your own interest. But no matter what you do, it just perpetuates the suffering.
The people I saw out there while we were talking here didn't all seem to be suffering.
Suffering isn't always wailing and gnashing of teeth, Morgan. Sometimes it's just about a quiet, persistent want that is never filled, needs that go unmet, and accepting that things will always be what they are. Even scraping out some happiness and finding things like hope and love. The fragility of those things in a place like this. That's also suffering. Believe me that people here are suffering no matter how they look at a glance.
I'd never known that kind of life, but clearly Odette had. It was a little difficult for me to get my head around it, but she was right that I didn't have a full understanding of it.
Anyway, I can't wait to get back to Arcalis.
We are nearly finished. Dr. Sosky is returning.
Are we? Okay. And we're back. I still didn't think I would be capable of that level of detachment, even if, now more than ever, I could see the logic behind it. This exhausting process of rehashing the day over and over and over in my mind made me realize this was probably one reason Ari said it. There was nothing else I could do about the situation. It wasn't my responsibility, and it wasn't within my power. But I couldn't get it out of my mind. But I was unable to stop myself from tiring myself out further, from being unable to mentally set it down for a while. I shut the water off and stood there dripping for a moment. My big fear, the one thing troubling me most, was getting used to this. Alright. Was you really connected to the Nutera experiments like Roan? The others had never confirmed it or mentioned it, but it aligned with what he told me about not having family. And would somewhat explain his fascination with mine. He and Roan knew each other well, but he didn't seem to like Cowrie, a citizen of Ventus and the son of the former president, much. If it was true, that would be so awful. I couldn't begin to grasp what that would be like. But I had no way to ask him, and it wasn't my place if he didn't want to discuss it. It didn't change anything anyway, but I did want to know more about him. It wasn't a subject you could just bring up, though. To think that things like that actually happen. I shouldn't assume, though. There was still a high possibility I was jumping to conclusions. In any case, if our relationship continued to get closer, then he'd tell me more about himself anyway. Okay.
I'm well aware of my own stubborn tendencies. However, I do understand that stubbornness for the sake of it is merely irritating.
Are we... okay, this is still different.
While I believe that it's generally healthy for work to remain at work,
and that too often we become so wrapped in our careers we are unable to disconnect from them when we should. Discussing things we struggle with is also an important coping strategy. I try to be cognizant of that as much as possible.
In other words, sometimes there are exceptions.
Of course. Rigid adherence to personal rules is not always the best course of action.
Is this... okay, then we're back now. Any affection here? Yes! Hey! Back to our affection streak. Visiting reopens the wound, right? Of course it would! I mean, I looked down, trying to figure out how to phrase what I wanted to say. It's obvious you lived in Antrim, and I saw what it was like there. I heard about the things that happened. I'm sure most people in Antrim have strong feelings about the upper levels.
Initially, I lived in Ventus, but only in one of their lab sectors, of course. Then we were moved to Solemn for a while to ensure the lab continued to exist in secrecy. And when those few subjects who survived managed to free ourselves, we hid in Antrim.
So he really was an experiment.
Does the revelation I was created in a laboratory there bother you?
What are we doing? Okay, instead of stubborn, we're going emotional this time. Are you really worried that it would? I would hope I didn't seem that shallow to him.
It seems like it would be out of character, yet I find people are confronted with hidden biases when they encounter new situations. It wouldn't be the first time it made someone view me in a different light, or that someone was unable to move past it, even if it wasn't their intent.
It doesn't make me see you differently. If anything, it just feels like it must have been hard. Not how you were born, but what that meant for you as a child. It means you lived without the support of parents, family, and that is aside from existing in a lab for the purposes of research. It's difficult to think about, but I still want to hear about it. About you. I suppose I can't completely deny that there may be unconscious biases, but I don't think I have any. Not about this, anyway. I don't know why I would. You're still you. A slight smile came to his face.
I am pleased to hear that, of course.
That was nice. I like that option, too. Looks like not affectionate this time, sadly. But flexible. We will see each other tomorrow anyway. We'll see each other tomorrow anyway.
Unfortunately, that may not be the case. Beginning tomorrow, I will need to focus my efforts on delving into the reason for the nanite immune response. Though I've been working on this for some time already, the situation in Antrim requires a more immediate solution. It is reaching the point the Council feels we may need to inform the Triad. And, as Magnus pointed out, we cannot be certain they don't have an informant there who may reveal it at any point. If they learn we were aware of it and said nothing, it could become a problem. I may not have time to meet up again for a few days.
Then we'll meet when we can. I'll be back to training tomorrow, which probably means doing laps while Caleb chases me.
How irritating that sounds. Perhaps a role reversal is in order. You'll get the same physical workout if you are chasing him around the training grounds instead. Though now that I consider it, the mental image of you chasing him is somewhat irritating as well.
I can only imagine the ways that would backfire anyway. I tightened my fingers around his hand, pulling him a little closer. Don't worry about it. If we can't see each other, I'll at least send you a message after training.
I'll look forward to it.
He leaned a little closer, his expression thoughtful. Ooh, asking for the permission.
May I kiss you, Morgan?
Heat rose to my face at the unexpected request. I never would have expected him to be the sort to ask. Not that I thought he'd ruthlessly go in for the kill, but he did seem more like the sort to just read the mood and do it when he knew the time was right. A soft smile came to my lips as I briefly dropped my gaze, then met his eyes again. Of course. Whoa, we got double kiss. He's like, gal away, Caleb. I can do the double kiss too. Nice. We love that. He took my face in his hands and leaned closer to press a very brief, sweet kiss to my lips. Far too short, but at the same time, somehow just right. Just enough to send pleasant flutters through me before it ended. When he pulled away, that same small smile was on his lips.
I will see you soon. And if not, I look forward to a message from you instead.
Good night, you.
Good night.
He started away, and I watched until he reached the end of the hall before I went inside. I wondered if I should have invited him. Maybe for a cup of tea to just prolong the evening a little more. But no, I felt this pace was good. I'd invite him next time. Okay, not yet. I went to change and wind down for bed, but now that I was alone, my mind immediately went back to everything else. Newterra, Magnus and Endgame, the thought of radical change. Somewhere at the back of mind, an idea was forming. This was the worst time of day for ideas, and I was telling myself I could think about it in the morning. But that was easier said than done. Was it even possible to implement radical change in a way that wasn't painful? Without repeating something like what happened on Newterra? How did you change an organization like Endgame, which was practically a society unto itself at this point? That thought followed me into sleep, troubling my dreams until morning.